So yeah, that's how I think you can make the most money off Exile coin possible. Obviously, you have to dupe the listeners though if you actually want to get your money's worth.
Sweet.
Oh, that goes without saying, right?
Yeah, making notes. Anyway, hello folks. Welcome back to GRIMDARK Therapy, where we go hard and we're never soft. Let's jump into some absolute diabolical hobby takes with our brief for today, because we're organised and slightly autistic, but we're mainly organised, and we have briefs for every single week we do this, and this one is my turn, and I selected the brief of what is your favourite edition of a Games Workshop wargame and why? You can choose a non-Games Workshop product with an explanation though. Who would like to tackle this first? As the host, I think I have to open up the floor to everybody. We have Maka here today, who has been joining us from Australia, where it is in the evening now, towards 10 o'clock in the evening, so, or is it just past that? I don't know. Well, thanks for joining us, Maka. And we have absolute Chad of the podcast, as always, Kaifa over there on What the 40k, who is blearily looking at his computer screen at 10 to 6 in the morning, wondering why the fuck he's talking to us at this time. How are you doing, guys?
Doing good. I'm not as beleaguered as you made me out to be. We're warming up.
Good.
Yeah, but see, and when people say there are no pros to methamphetamines, well, we can prove them wrong.
I will not dignify that with a response.
All right, so
Nothing incriminating.
what did everybody? I know Mackie touched on it over the before we got started, but Kaifa, what were you up to over Christmas, man? How was the American Christmas? You guys kind of have two Christmases, you know. You have I loved it over there. You have like some time off for, I think it's like President's Day or something, and then there's some time off for Thanksgiving, and then it's Christmas. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I'll answer your question with a clarification first.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Canada.
Oh, you don't get any of that shit. Oh, okay.
No, we just a standard, regular, an authentic Christmas.
Oh. Oh, very nice. I mean, you know, it's just an authentic Christmas with mousses and maple syrup and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, as you do. To answer your question, I guess properly, it's a pretty low-key Christmas, wholesome family, stereotypical, I guess, in that way. Christmas.
Dude, that's all you need. I'm not a Christmas person. I've said it on the channel before. I don't mind Christmas. If you're into Christmas, I celebrate for you, and you know. Same with my kid as well. Since I've had my kid, I've been very much more into Christmas. But like, nah, it's not. You know, again, I'm not like a bar humbug. Let's all not do Christmas. I'm not that kind of person. But I could happily. My favourite part of Christmas is the time between Christmas and New Year, because you've got lots of leftovers. You know, nothing's really expected of you. Work is really quiet if you're working, and you just chill. It's a calm time, and then you have a party to look forward to, maybe on New Year's Eve, which is pretty cool. But Christmas itself, like in the UK, it starts like the 1st of November, and you're exhausted by the end of it. You just, I just need this to go away. I don't want this to be around anymore. It's horrible. And I've always said, I'm a Halloween person. I love Goth Christmas. It's brilliant. But if you don't like Halloween, Halloween leaves you alone. You know? But if you don't like Christmas, Christmas has no such qualms. It will come into your house, it will kick your door down, and scream it's Christmas at the top of its lungs for 2 months straight. Well, there we go.
I don't know. I don't think it's much different to any of the other holidays. They all sort of, at least here, like we've already got Easter stuff coming out in the shops. It's unreal. Shit, you're not.
That is unreal. I struggle to believe you. I guess I have to. I guess I have no other choice but to believe you.
Yeah, the hot cross buns are already out. So that's the patron saint of Easter or something. I don't know. It just, as soon as one holiday ends, the next one's already begun, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think me and the missus were walking around Tesco the other day, one of our stores here in the UK, and there was Easter eggs on the top shelf. And we're still in December, and there's Easter eggs on the top shelf. You know, just what are you doing? What do you think? Then again, I was very tempted to buy one because I'm allowed. I was allowed chocolate over Christmas, but I didn't. But yeah, it's the other thing that Macca deals with that I couldn't, is Southern Hemisphere Christmas. It's absolutely boiling. You know, it is so hot down there. Like, I was in South Africa once for Christmas. Never again. It was so strange. It was just like you were sitting there in your shorts and nothing else, just sweating all day. It's like, yeah, it's open my Christmas presents. Oh God, do we have to? Can I just go in the pool? You know, it's kind of like.
I thought that was just what happened to like people from the UK when it was like a mild, like 20-degree day.
Well, that's
You'll
true.
just start like physically melting like human candles.
That's true. I mean, that was the one thing that I hated about being in America and coming back was like, you're like, oh, it's so cold, and I'm like, this isn't cold, dude. I've had to go to work and it's been like -30, and we've had they put sleds on the front of the trains just to clear it, and then they can still go to work. In Britain, it's like a sprinkling of snow. All the trains stop the trains, stop the train. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. People will slip coming into the station. And then they shouldn't be in the gene pool. Then get on with it. Let me get to work. You know, it's just like, you know, other countries just don't fuss. It's, you know, especially I think Canada would be the same. Like, the snow lives there in Canada, so it's like, you know, it's like home territory for snow. So, you know, I just don't get how fragile our country is in terms of like getting around and making a fuss out of things. It's 25 degrees. Well, all the trains are off. Why? Because the tracks expand in the heat.
Yeah, you want to see track expand the heat. Oh, come over here in summer.
The trains are still running.
Yeah, we've had in the outback though. I've seen sections of rail line where the tracks have expanded by hundreds of meters over their length. so you, literally, there's no trains able to go through because you're talking like 5-meter deviation off of where the tracks are meant to be sitting. Some serious expansion.
I think it was Steve Hughes who said, you know, in England he's Australian, and he was like, you know, they're made of steel, right? You know how hot it needs to be for them to lose their molecular structure. It's 25 out there, man. You know, 25. And he was like, he paid for a train ticket, and the guy was like, yeah, I want to go from England. I want to go from London to Liverpool. He goes, yeah, that's 300 quid. He's like, what? Yeah, it's 300 quid. It's halfway across the country, isn't it? He goes, well, your country's only 6 hours big, mate. In Australia, it takes me 6 hours to put the bloody bin out. You start at 10 in the morning. You get back for like tea time. Bin's out. Cool. Brilliant.
Yeah, that was one of the things like going over to America. America is very similar size to Australia, like continental landmass, but it's so much more densely populated.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously there are parts of America that are very, very sparse. You know, Nevada and, you know, parts of Texas and Arizona. Yeah, West Virginia. You know, but even then, like, when you fly over Australia at nighttime versus flying over the United States at nighttime, the amount of more lights you see going over the United States, like you can see so many more towns because, you know, 10 times the population size. And our population is mostly around the coastline in Australia. We don't live in the desert and, you know, jump around with kangaroos. So it's, yeah, it's just weird things like that. Like the scale didn't blow us away, but yeah, just seeing that kind of does. Like just how many more towns there are, and therefore how many people there are by default.
So it was just like the density of it that was alarming. Not alarming, but like, oh, this is what this is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't think people don't realize how big Australia is until like you actually get it. Yeah, you get a side-by-side comparison, or you put one on top of the other. You're like, oh my god, it's massive. But yeah. One thing I wanted to ask before we get started: why don't you guys build inland? Is it just barren? Is it just like really, really hard to get to?
hard to get to, far away from anywhere like ports, farming. The only farming that goes on inland is cattle farming. Um, yeah, it just inland is a different place. I can describe what it's like to go into like the interior, but you actually have to do it to understand and appreciate it.
Do more of the deadly creatures habitat is it located inland? Is that why also?
Not necessarily. So like, yeah,
I think
okay.
it's like
Some of
Lustria. It's like it's like dinosaurs popping around and stuff.
Or I guess they
Yeah,
live
so-
anywhere, but then they just moved away from civilization, right?
Yeah.
Well, no. Here it's pretty normal for the deadly stuff to live right close to the human population centers.
Awesome.
But
Hmm.
very few people get hurt annually. Like, okay, there's examples like the Western Sydney funnel web. Like, it'll mess you up proper, and it's in Sydney, which is heavily populated. You're talking a spider that's evolution was so perfect that it just stopped evolving back basically around the time of the dinosaurs, and hasn't really changed much because it's very, very venomous. Like, it's in that top 1-2 category constantly. And it likes to go into people's shoes. So then you put on your shoes, and then this sort of small tarantula that's very aggressive and has enough venom to put down like an elephant will just repeatedly start attacking you because then you're stepping on it. That was close to that's literally in people's backyards in Sydney. Then you've got things like inland taipan. So obviously it's in the name, it's inland. So that's sort of that's the deadliest land snake. But nobody ever gets bitten by them because they are further inland. You've got the deadliest snail in the cone snail. You've got the deadliest octopus in the blue-ringed octopus. You've got box jellyfish. Then you've got like all of the lesser breeds of deadly snakes, like your tiger snakes, your brown snakes, king brown snakes, copperheads, and a few others. All of which will just easily kill you. But again, like, very few people get hurt by these annually. So, it does happen. Obviously, we've got great white sharks, mako sharks, bull sharks, all that kind of thing. And, we've got scorpions, and we've got redback spiders, which are like a deadlier black widow. It's, again, very rare that you actually get hurt by these things.
I think the country is also like set up to be like, oh, this guy's been bitten by this. Here's the anti-venom. Or this guy has been, the doctors are actually trained to be like, oh yeah, this is oh my god, he's been mauled by this. That's, on the rare occasion does happen anyway. So it's like, it's not like Britain where they've been
most
like,
places, people like Cairns, for example. If you live in Cairns, you're used to like dealing with crocodiles, right? So it's very rare for people to get bitten by like the salties up there. And yeah, it can happen, but it's not very likely, so it's not something that actually has to be dealt with that often. Like, people are smart enough and get taught from an early enough age, like anything, what's dangerous, you teach your kids. And Australia is very much like that. Just people just think like, hey, there's a snake, should I go fucking with it? Nah, probably not. Let's just leave it. It's no rocket science. Yeah, like, if you're in like near Darwin, for example, where you're up in the Cape York Peninsula, it's like, a murky brown river in saltwater crocodile habitat. I think not. You just don't go swimming there. I don't know if you guys ever watch Russell. You ever watch Russell Coit and Aussie Adventures?
No, I have not.
So how there's like those guys that go around the world, like your bushmen, who, like, here we are in the wild Kalahari, and we're going to travel around and show you the sights and meet the locals. These adventure shows. Well, it's a piss take of that. By an Aussie comedian, and he always has like these really profound, retarded sayings. He'll be like, saltwater crocodiles live in saltwater, as the name implies. However, they can also be found in freshwater, which goes to show they can't be trusted. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Look up Russell Coit's All Aussie Adventures and just watch like a compilation of it, and you'll get the joke very quickly.
Alrighty.
Nice.
So, the brief. What is your favourite edition of a Games Workshop wargame and why? You can choose a non-Games Workshop product with an explanation. Who wants to jump into that one first? Who wants to open that can of worms?
Well, I just did a bunch of talking, so volunteering, Kaifa.
Okay. So I guess I have an answer from experience and an answer that's more theoretical. A theoretical and a practical, if you will, okay? Mm-hmm. So I didn't play much Warhammer 3rd Edition, but from the research I have done, and as a fan of rules that are written which reward and encourage hobby efforts in a creative hobby such as tabletop wargaming with Games Workshop IPs, I really appreciate 3rd Edition, where you have orcs can loot vehicles and they use the profiles of those vehicles with their terrible ballistic skill. Right? I think, if memory serves, the same is true with like Ludas using looted weapons, and even like the Chaos Space Marine 3.5 book. Like, there's just, to me, for my sensibilities, I think different people will value different gamers will value different criteria differently, right? That's a totally agreeable statement. But for myself, I really like rules that encourage and reward hobby efforts, because I think it's one of the neatest parts of the hobby is the things we create, right? From a practical answer, I've had too many ups and downs with modern 40k, but I think the edition, if you can call it that, of a Games Workshop game that I enjoyed the most is probably Shadespire. Well, I refer to it as Shadespire. I guess it's Warhammer Underworlds, the very first debut season. Maybe that's how they would term it, not an edition necessarily. But back when it was called Shadespire, that was just a very fun tactical game. And I even went to a few organized events for Shadespire at the time. I think I got a prize. My point is, I was playing it a lot, enough to go to organized events and have a fun time, and play with randoms and compete, I guess you could say, right? But then,
sorry, go on, man.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was
just gonna
think, that your time in the, say, do you think a lot of these answers are going to coincide with my time in the hobby was really ingrained in the, I was doing the most in the hobby at this time, so this is my favorite edition? Do you reckon it's going to be more like that?
I guess reasonably so. Right? Because everyone's going to speak from their experiences, or whenever they had their kind of your best honeymoon kind of experience. I imagine is kind of how it would. I know we have a sample size of 3, so we'll take from that what we will.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think Shadespire, or Warhammer Underworld's 1st edition, whatever you want to call it, was probably the game I enjoyed from, overall, from Games Workshop. I'm enjoying Kill Team at the moment right now, but it's still kind of early for me to weigh in. Do I like it as much as I did that 1st edition of Shadespire? But then after the 2nd edition of Shadespire, can't remember what it's called now. They all have weird derivative, different names.
So do you think as people get older, they naturally drift into things like Shadespire, things like Silver Tower, Kill Team, Spearhead?
Maybe. I mean, that's not a great answer to your question. I think it's my natural kind of arc is you like Warhammer, you like the IP, you get into 40k, right? And then you kind of, for myself, I get a little disappointed, maybe disillusioned a little bit with the way rules are managed and choices Games Workshop makes as a company. And then you still want to enjoy the hobby space. Maybe you have a good community and friends, in your local gaming store. And then I think the specialist games, from a pure gaming point of view, I can enjoy the time spent playing Kill Team 3rd edition at the moment more than 40k 10th edition, and it's more convenient, right? So time spent and moving models around versus like the satisfaction you gain from the activity. Presently, I'm enjoying Kill Team more than 40k, right? But I think Warhammer Underworld is definitely the addition of a Games Workshop game I've enjoyed the most, I think.
Okay.
Funny you say you mentioned the rules writing there, because I had a brilliant comment actually left on a Horus Heresy video, right? And I'd love to read it out now because it plays into the rules thing. And I'll just read you part of it. He says, nobody mentioned the rules writing now. In previous editions, it would be things like reroll to hit in close combat. But in this edition of the game, a model with this special rule, when it is attacking with a melee weapon in the close combat phase, if it has not already benefited from this special rule in this phase, if an attack misses, it may re-roll missed attacks with that melee weapon against the same enemy if the enemy is not already dead and that dice has not already been re-rolled. And I feel that is exactly right, like how rules are written now when you mention what feels smooth, because I'm a big fan of the original Shadespire. I really liked that game as well. And,
funny. I had no idea. I thought I'd be the only person who enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I actually have like a custom foam case and that I got from, I think it was Just Lasered, I'm going to say. Did it? I really liked that first edition of the game, and for a long time after it came out, I was still calling it Shadespire.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm about.
Yeah, even though it's technically Warhammer Underworlds.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying Eldari. I can't get on board.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think,
sorry.
I always thought 3rd edition would be the one that was before this. I thought literally this is where we'd be. Like everybody would say 3rd edition, and that's where we are. Do you know what I mean? Like it was the edition that most people our age kind of started with, and it was the edition that most people hold in sort of nostalgia. Is like, okay, this is what 40k was to me when I was younger, and I think when you're younger, you let things slide that perhaps you wouldn't when you're a bit older. I know this because when I was younger, about around the year 2000, I completed what I thought was, and I still think it is up there, my favourite video game of all time, that is Final Fantasy IX. And I thought, this is the greatest thing I've ever played, and I will ever play, And I always held it in my mind as this wonderful thing. And then for the channel, my old channel years ago, I went back to it around my 30th birthday, and I played it. And it just there was certain bits of that game that are rough, and I was like, yeah, this is not like the greatest thing ever, and it was really, really, really difficult. And I suspect going back to, I still loved it, I still thought it was great, but I suspect going back to 3rd edition, I would still be like, yeah. I'd probably think there's parts of this that are really annoying, just like the new edition. But in terms of what Mac is saying about the newest editions, absolutely correct. In trying to, what Games Workshop have tried to do, they've tried to take away the bad feels of, oh, I missed the save, or oh, I missed the shot, right? And instead of just moving on with the game and saying, okay, what can you do next? It's, no, let's give you another chance to do that. Oh, you missed it, okay, let's do another chance, and another one, and another one. Okay, now we can give up on it, that kind of a thing. It's taking away all of they're trying to take away all of the dice parts of the game, where it's like, no. If the dice say no, just say no this time. It's fine. It's a dice game. Random stuff happens. When you try to not randomize it as much, you lose the fun. And I've said that before. We've had stories on the channel of, single goblins holding up an entire unit of Empire men who were charging them, and then the Empire men somehow lose the combat and run away, and they're chased by the little grot. That's brilliant because the dice decided that's going to happen, right? That's a cinematic moment that everybody laughs at, even the Empire player, right? In modern day 40k, that could not happen. The dice wouldn't allow that fun to happen. They would step in and go, no, do a re-roll. Okay, Goblin's dead. No fun for you, right? No fun for you, no fun for you. Let's carry on, right? That's where
I call that you're having your cake and eating it too, because like it used to be, like, again, I'll speak more from the 30k perspective here, but I call it your second chance for doing dumb things. So, you would have a vehicle, for example, and you're like, I can move this vehicle forward to get in range to shoot that unit. But if I do, I'm going to be exposing my vehicle, and I've just got to hope that something bad doesn't happen to it. Maybe they target something else, or maybe I just get lucky with their, and they get a bad roll. Now it's like, no. You can do that move, and you know what? You'll be fine. You just do that move, don't worry. No tactical decision making, no risk reward calculation. Like, that's the difference to me between like the then and now, and that's what kills the character. Like, how many times have you had like a sergeant be the last man standing in a combat, and you're like, I'm going to give him a promotion, and you now make a new miniature based off that sergeant, where it's like now he's like a captain or something, because like, you're basically promoting your model for a job well done. I've done that heaps. Because it's cool when that happens. That's the fluff, that's the theme, that's the fun. And then now that just sort of, that decision's taken away from you, because it's like, well, a lowly captain can't win this fight. No, I'm using a stratagem, a command point.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, I think those moments do still happen. It's just, they're a bit more manipulatable. Yeah, that's a word. They can be manipulated by either player, right? To keep stuff alive or to push stuff down, right?
Yeah.
And then, but for clarity, look. I fully believe that there are rules choices in 3rd edition and older editions. I've heard stories and looked at the older books, despite not playing the edition, where it's like, I don't like these choices, right? Just purely from a position of rules which encourage hobby efforts, that seems to have been lost to time a little bit.
See,
I fondly look at that in 3rd edition, where I'm like, oh, look at this, right?
See, I'm not going to pick 3rd edition, as much as I absolutely adore that edition as my favorite 40k. I'm going to pick 4th edition. Its rules are not as good as 5th edition. I think on pure rules, 5th edition's the high point. For like the actual core gameplay itself. The problem is 5th edition suffers from having 2 games being played simultaneously. One is the Matt Ward style codexes at one end, where you've got like basically everything he wrote, and then at the other end, so like the Imperial Guard of the time, the Grey Knights of the time, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, all those forces, Space Marines themselves, Necrons, Dark Eldar, they're all super powerful factions, right? But at the other end of the spectrum, you had like, Chaos Space Marines and Tau and, things that, they could occasionally win a game, but in general, you would say they kind of suck that edition. And if they went against each other, like Chaos versus Tau, you're like, oh, well, this is fine and balanced. But the minute you put, like, I don't know, Chaos Demons against Grey Knights, you were getting it handed to you, no matter how good a player you were, right? So I pick 4th because in 4th edition 40k, what you get instead is you get all of the awesome 3.5 style books. And Chaos 3.5 gets unfairly maligned because when it came out, it was the first of those books where it gave Chaos all these really cool conversions and upgrades. And for armies that weren't on the immediate receiving end of similar rules, they got their ass handed to them, right? But what people forget, oh so conveniently, is all of the books got the same treatment soon after. Tyranids, you want the most evolutions ever for Tyranids? 4th edition, right? If you play Inquisition in any variety, then you can't go further than that edition. I mean, Codex Demon Hunters, Codex Witch Hunters, You know, like, come on. It actually had full codexes for both the Grey Knights. And the Grey Knights felt like such a powerhouse force because this is in the days before massed power weapons in armies. So for the Grey Knights to come in with massed power weapons as an army, that was really, really strong. Like, they felt by far the strongest on an individual fighter level out of any faction, right? In you also had Imperial Guard. You'd be able to take different doctrines for the Imperial Guard and combine them together in interesting ways. You could go, all right, if I want to play it thematic, I can take this, but I could do like say a all Cassican as my core troops choices, and I'm going to deep strike my Cassican in. Right, that was allowed in that edition. The Ultramarines had obviously a fixed set of doctrines, but the way the chapters worked in that edition was you got to pick. There was a major and a minor positive, and a major and a minor negative.
Oh,
So
I like
you
this
picked your special
already.
rules, and the way it worked was like, okay, you can take like one major, and if you take a major, then you have to take a positive and a negative major, for example. So you might take something like, okay, I want to play a White Scars themed maybe successor chapter. So yep, I can take bikes as for everyone, and I'm going to put apothecaries on all my bikes, like as squad sergeant replacements. This is back in the days though when apothecaries only gave you a single feel no pain for your unit, not a everyone gets feel no pain. So it wasn't blatantly OP like now.
Mhm.
But then it'd be like, okay, and every time you lose one of those apothecaries, the other guy gets a victory point, right? So there's like a major trade-off in there that you had to pick through them, what your pros and cons were going to be of taking those forces. And it was very thematic, build an army. The rules had more going on than third edition did. It was a lot more balanced than third edition was in regards to people weren't just like if you got assaulted by Khorne berserkers in third edition or Blood Angels, basically that was bend over and just take it. Because as soon as they were done with one combat, you got to sweeping advance, 2d6. Oh, if I get in range of another unit, I just charge straight into another combat. Melee was king.
Used
Right?
to love that.
That got tidied up.
Yeah.
That got tidied up where it was still there, but it wasn't like that kind of level of OP. The charging out of vehicles, yeah, you still could, but you couldn't do like turn 2 supercharged rhinos moving 18 inches across the table and then spilling out a squad straight into your rectum, like that was all cleaned up. So although I prefer to take 5th edition's overall rules for the edition, when it comes to codexes, I just think you can't beat what 4th edition had. And if you go back and you actually look, 3.5 Chaos is not blatantly OP broken when you compare it to what Marines, Guard, NIDS, and other forces had that edition. The game was expanding as well at the time because now we had, in 3rd edition, gave us Necrons and Tau as proper
Right.
fleshed out factions. 4th edition actually expanded both of those factions with a bunch of new stuff. And it also gave us, obviously, the Sisters of Battle coming back with a proper inquisitorial force, not just the 3rd edition rulebook rule set that they had. And it also gave us, obviously, the Grey Knights as a fighting force, which we hadn't seen since 2nd edition. And that's my long-winded nostalgia.
Oh, that's a strong pick, man. A lot of appealing points you raised there. I especially adore the design philosophy around having weaknesses built in to your armies or factions. I feel like so much of, and this is like again speaking to my bias of like against competitive, organized, try hard play, but so much of that kind of like list building and I feel like modality is just eliminate as many weaknesses as possible from your list. And I feel like when you have no weaknesses, you also lose a lot of character from your army.
I think
Forcing you to take weaknesses was a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think they should bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've said it before, say it again. In my opinion, a really good war game isn't balanced. It just isn't balanced. Like this is you should be allowed to find yourself in a war game if you want to, and I think that's something that Makalak touched on with his pick there. In that was an edition where you could generally take what you want, but it doesn't mean people say all the time like, oh well combat in that edition was really broken, and it kind of was. But then you had different armies that could do different things. So you still had really good shooty armies that could actually blow you off the table in a few turns if you weren't too careful, you know. I genuinely think everybody should be broken in one way or the other. Every codex should have 1 or 2 lists that you can eke out the codex if you really want to power game it that are absolutely busted, you know. Because it's 40k, it should be fun. We should be here having a laugh. There's a big reason why Warhammer Total War 3, even after such a disastrous launch, has stayed the course. Because it does that. Every faction in that video game is broken in some way. You can eke out some amazing combinations in that game if you play your cards right and you build your empire properly, and you can absolutely get some doom stacks going and things like that, right? But you can also play it extremely balanced if you want to. You can have your infantry, cavalry, archers mix, and your skirmishers and all that, and you can still win doing that. That's the beauty of it, right? I think the perfect edition of a war game is unbalanced. We don't need balance. Balance. We need core balance. We need the game to play, you know, nicely and to actually not be completely unfair to one person or the other. But in terms of so the core rules need to be balanced, but your codex doesn't. Your codex should be express yourself as this army, roleplay as this army, get your army on the tabletop and make it do the broken thing you want it to do really well, and do that, right?
Well, the classic rule number 1 was always have fun.
Yeah, it was the golden rule: have fun. And if both players aren't having fun, you're not playing 40k properly. That was the whole thing, you know. And that was enforced, man. That was when at proper tournaments with like grown-ass men who were like dads and stuff, it was enforced. You were asked at the end of most games, did you have fun? And if you said no, you'd call the tournament organizer over. You'd be getting like, what's going on? Like, why didn't you both have fun? We're playing 40k here, right? And you know, again, those are the days when I used to go to tournaments with older friends, and I'd never play, but I would be there and I would get to see what was going on. But your games, to me, the rampant pursuit of balance, do you know what it leads to? FAQs all the time, patching quote unquote of the rules. Your codex is not being worth a dime once you get them out the shop. You know, that they lead to the whole game being geared towards tournament play, which only about 10 to 20% of the people playing 40k actually play in, right? That's where it leads to. Because those are the people who want a more balanced game, and good luck to them, right? Absolutely, because you want it to be a sport. Fine, cool. Why didn't you go over there and do that then, and leave us here where we can have our thematic games and our broken games and our busted combinations because it's funny, you know, and things like that. Like, 40k should be a game like that where you can absolutely build something broken if you want to. Because all it does is it encourages you to talk to other people. Hey man, this is my list. I've brought 2 lists today. One of them is pretty busted, and the other one just that normal, you know, fluffy. Which one do you want to go with? I don't know. Let's have a look at them, right? And you look over them together, and the guy goes, I fancy a challenge today. This time seems hilarious. Let's go with this one. I'll take it, right? I'll take the beating. Let's have a go, right? It's rapport. You go back and forth. The only time a non-balanced game breaks down is when people just expect it to work out the box. You've got to communicate. It's a social game, right? I'm sorry, that's what it is. If you want to go to a tournament, yeah, those are non-social most of the time. You will get most of your opponents won't say 4 words to you apart from, you know, you need to say you need a 3+ save on that, or a 2+, you know, to, you know, -2 armor penetration on that, you know, or something, you know. So to me, it's losing the soul. We're expanding on Macca's point. It's kind of losing the actual soul and rhythm of what 40k and what idle wargaming is. You should be getting moments where, you know, a single Gretchen, as we had on Hobby Nightmares the other day, a single Gretchen chases 5 or 6 Eldar Guardians off the table. That's hilarious, and it should happen more often, you know. And it shouldn't happen every 5 seconds like it does in, you know, like bloody Helldivers whenever I play that. But it should happen literally, you know, once a game. Something odd should happen like that, where the dice just come up with something and everybody laughs and goes, "Wow, that was awesome." You know, a cinematic moment there. What do we have now? It's just, it's on rails. You can't have too much fun. No. Step back. Do your re-roll. Now do another re-roll. Okay, that one missed. Now do another re-roll. Okay, you hit. Good. good. That should have happened anyway, because Space Marines are awesome. No, come on. Let the game breathe, you know? I feel bad because I've done all that talking. Now it's kind of my turn to say what to say what edition I would like the most. I've got to say, I'm going to be that guy and say third, mainly because of that box set that we got at the start of third, the Black Templars, Dark Eldar.
Hell yeah!
The beast of that box set, the Blanchian box set, as I like to call it. It was just epic, and I think the reason why I like that edition most is mainly because of the community rather than the game. So the community at that time was just full of dads. Yeah, it was full of greybeards who were just like, let me tell you how to play this game, son. Alright, cool. And you'd go into the store, and they'd look at your Eldar, or my Eldar at the time, and he'd look at me, and he'd go, you're in for a rough time. Because you're too young to play Eldar, and the Eldar are really powerful if you know how to use them. And again, I ended up winning. I had that experience of going into the hobby with a really broken army, but only if you were really good at the game, and having to learn in a boot camp from the men at the store how to play this army. And by the time I'd finished, I was beating them in games and getting it clapped on the back, like, good job, man, like, you've done it. Those were my formational years as a kid around dudes. I've said it before, like, my mum was a single parent. You know, my grandpa tried his best and he was awesome, but, like, never really had a dad at home. So throughout my life, I've collected father figures, like, much older. All of my male friends, most of them have been, like, 10, 15 years older than me, you know? Because I'm like a sponge. I get all that experience. I'm like, okay, so how did you approach this problem or that problem, you know? I'm always starved for information, which is why the channel kind of exists, because I like to do that for other people now. Like, okay, well, this is what I've lived, and maybe you can use this to do what you want. But, like, 40k was third edition was that first time when I was exposed. This can sound really odd. I was exposed to men like that, you know, like, and like, you know, older dudes who just were like, okay, we'll show you how this works, and then you got better at the thing they're showing you how to do. There's nothing better than that. Like when a guy you respect teaches you to do something, and then you pull it off, and no, that sounds wrong as well. He teaches you how to do something, and then you do well at that thing. That's a really good feeling, and that's what I remember out of third edition. I got all the feels there because I wasn't so mechanical. Because, to be honest with you, I don't remember much of third edition. I remember I was very good at it, even for a kid, but I don't remember very much about the. I remember the Land Raider being OP as shit. I remember that. 14 armor all round, everybody. I mean, that was, you know, and most weapons at the time could hardly scratch 13 armor. So yeah, that was a time. But in terms of the actual game itself, like third edition for me is where it's at. And weirdly, 8th edition. Now I know that 8th edition started to introduce the rerolls and rerolls and rerolls. But 8th edition was the edition I sold most when I was working at Games Workshop. That was the one where I was literally on hand there. The day it released, I was in the store throwing boxes at people, you know. And that was breath of fresh air. It really was. After 7th edition, the miasma of formations and, oh my god, the slow-ass games. Getting 8th edition and seeing a 40k game, I shit you not, go an hour and a half, 2 hours at 1,500 points was beautiful to see. I was like, this is amazing. We're getting 8 or 9 games done in the store a day. This is awesome. It didn't stay that way, of course, because Games Workshop just can't leave a good thing alone. It should have gone, if they wanted to introduce complexity, they should have gone, okay, maybe we do put in, you know, armor facing. Maybe we do put in blast templates back into the game that people liked. You know, maybe we do that and we don't make it re-roll after re-roll after re-roll, stratagems, gotchas, all that sort of stuff. You know, because they've been chasing the esports wagon for some time now. But that is mine. That 3rd and 8th edition are mine, mainly for selfish reasons. Do you guys have any non-Games Workshop products that you would like to extol for the people and say this is also brilliant, go and try it?
Well, That's a tough one. I was going to say I have an honourable Games Workshop mention, which is OG Mordheim.
I agree.
Yeah. On that one.
Talk about world building. Okay, there was some shenanigans that could be pulled off. Looking at the Skaven players in particular, just doing mass slings, which is not really in the spirit of the game, but in general, I think Mordheim. Talk about a like. You want grimdark? I mean, Mordheim's about as grimdark as it gets. Like the cover art and like the crazy, wacky, like Blanche style drawings of like it's like an Escher painting of like a gothic German city in the 1500s. Of just like towering. All the houses are slightly off kilter, leaning over the laneways, and like mutants and warpstone, and I don't know. There's just something so well realized about that game.
Yeah, maybe Mordheim deserves more than a mention. But I mean, I totally agree. There's just so much. Mordheim I found to be an extremely wholesome, like beer and pretzels gaming experience. When you're playing with people who aren't trying to game it up and like make it all try hard and let me keep restarting my team until I get a busted starting like trait or whatever. Until I get a vampire count that can nuke your entire group, right?
Yeah.
There are those weird exceptions, but usually it's just a good time.
Yeah, that's the big thing that stood out to me from because it was one of those games I got into early because I could afford it. Like Battlefleet Gothic, it was as a teenager, didn't have a lot of disposable income, and I could actually afford to get into Mordheim. And the thing was, everyone who played it entirely for hobby's sake. Because it was like, yep, every battle you fight, you're going to be adding to your characters, converting your characters. Like, it was such it was like mega wholesome. And again, like North was saying before, that those pleasant memories he has of, working with the older gamers, the mentor figures. Mordheim very much was that for me, because I got into 40k in the second ed era. But Mordheim was where, like, actually just, it was a different pace. And you got to actually chat with people. And it was like learning what it's like to actually communicate with grown adults. Those basic foundational skills that you sort of people take for granted. But it's like actually kind of important to be able to do that okay, I can't just talk about like what pop culture I'm into. Like, okay, I'm a huge Simpsons fan. They don't want to hear about that. So what am I going to talk to them about? And yeah, learning those things was, I think, very, very formative for me.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why Trench Crusade has been such an upturn in support has been because it's the guys from Mordheim, or at least some of the guys from Mordheim, doing Trench Crusade. And again, I'm not sure how it's going to play when it's there, if it's going to play the same way, but like, yeah, it does look like it's going to be something similar. Mordheim was another representation of that time in the hobby, though, wasn't it? Like, it was a time when...
Same era?
Yeah, same era. It was Games Workshop embracing the silliness, but also, the coolness of their own settings. Let's expand this a bit more. Let's show you the underbelly of this a bit more. Around the same era, the Eisenhorn books were coming out, right? It was one of the peak eras of Games Workshop where they looked at their own setting and thought, okay, well, let's expand on this, let's show people what this is, and let's go more in depth, and let's show them something beyond Space Marines. Let's show them something beyond a Space Marine kicking an Orc's head in, let's do something else. And that was the time, I don't think people nowadays who get into the hobby, again, I don't want to be one of these guys who, you weren't there, it was so much better back in my day, but like, Games Workshop is one of those weird places where that's actually true. Like, the late 90s were essentially peak Warhammer. That was the time when you could say... But it's not... We're not saying it could never come back either. Like, at least I'm not. I'm not saying this couldn't happen again. I absolutely think Games Workshop, at least some people at Games Workshop, have it in them to absolutely make a game like this and have it be absolutely fantastic. But
Yes, I think, look, I agree. There's probably there's a possibility there could be a second renaissance, we could call it, but I don't know if the incentive is there. I think Games Workshop is very encouraged by the competitive scene, because it's been very lucrative for them.
Do you have any games
compared to catering to the narrative scene?
Yeah.
This is my bias and suspicion.
Do you have
I don't know
any
if you guys feel differently.
non-Games Workshop games you'd like to call out and say that's a decent setting or that's a decent game?
I've only dabbled, but I really enjoyed my dabbling with Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty fun.
Left field. Why was that?
But I also just kind of like the IP. So, from a gameplay point of view, it's I guess you would call it like it's a skirmish game. But you have a team of characters from the Marvel IP that you can kind of like assemble. You can have an X-Men team, an Avengers team. You can mix and match however you like. And it's just kind of a fun playground. They had very cool environmental mechanics where you could, use Spider-Man and like web sling like objects and hit enemies with them. Like whip them around because you'd have like your measuring gauges, and you could grab an object within the long measuring gauge and whip it wherever it would arc, like that. Those kinds of mechanics.
That's cool. I've seen people play it, but it's not one I've actually played myself. So, yeah, it's been on the hobby curious list for a little while.
Like with any game, it's like if there's no community to play it, it's like you don't really get much opportunities to play, right?
Yeah, sadly.
But I like it. I think it's neat. That's all I can say about it, though.
Yeah, thinking of non-Games Workshop games, one that has done well for itself, and I still really rate, Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones tabletop.
Yeah, interesting.
Really in all honesty, like Warhammer Fantasy Battles sucks. It's just people love it because it's Warhammer IP, and they love that world, that universe. Song of Ice and Fire, rules-wise, ease of learning the game system, mechanics of the game system, infinitely better. Infinitely better.
Okay. So it's comparable to Fantasy Battles then?
Yep. So the key difference is when you play Song of Ice and Fire, you can make your traditional square base force, and you can play just a straight up square base, movement mechanics, pivoting your units, all that kind of thing, type battle. But what you can do is you can include the Game of Thrones element, which is where you have a separate, basically a miniature board off to the side, and each turn you can place your characters, your NPCs, the people who don't get involved in direct fighting, get to be included in the game. So like your Sansa Stark, your Tyrion Lannister, your Cersei Lannister, they are NPCs that basically get to go onto that board, and that gives you passive buffs for the square base component, and you can use it or you can not use it. Like, it's a totally optional element to the game system, and it's really, really good. As for the units themselves, they are set sizes, so all units are the same size, but what you get is you get unit cards which tell you everything you ever need to know about the unit, and it's way easier than Warhammer Fantasy Battles for working out what's happening, because it basically says, like, yep, if you have any models in, say, the second or third rank, the rank counts as existing, therefore you get this many attacks with the unit. Once all the models in that rank are gone, you now get this many attacks with the unit, right? And it's just really easy to keep track of what's happening without having to I've got to count it now. How many models have I got in the unit? That sort of thing. And then the way it utilizes special characters is they essentially join a unit. They're there all game. They're usually the last one in the unit to die, but they give a buff to the unit. So that's their special thing. Similar to a sort of almost like a stratagem, but because it's very dependent on the character itself, it's very, very limited in its use. So you got to be really smart with how you employ it. And yeah, I think that game system is just...
One thing I also have to say about that game system, the models are strictly ring-a-ding. The models are gorgeous for that, for what it is.
They come pre-built.
Yeah.
Right? And the boxes that you buy have a clear blow-molded plastic in them. So you can transport the miniatures around using the box that you bought them in. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to... Like, all the models'
awesome.
Stats are on the unit card that are in the box, and the box can be used to transport the models. The movement tray comes with them, the works. They're all pre-built. Very, very durable, I've found the models to be as well. Like, you can drop them and they typically don't explode on you. And it's great. It's what you want. And price-wise, I mean, it's cheaper than Games Workshop, and yet they're very well detailed. You know, they're on par with a lot of the Monopost stuff from Games Workshop. Okay, Games Workshop's still the better plastic, the better molds. Like, let's not get carried away here, but it's comparable, and for the price, it can't be beat. So yeah, I would say if you're into Square Base and you want to give something that's got, you know, you can get a ton of tactical depth out of it. It's up to you what you get out of it, which is the sort of thing I love, where it's like it's encouraging you to play it how best suits you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I love watching battle reports of that game as well. Like it's a strangely photogenic game. When you know the way it flows, the way it plays, and the way it forces player interaction. It's a much more watchable game than 40k is, in my opinion.
It's very cathartic too. Like, yeah, when you're watching games of it, you're like, yeah, I'm surprisingly addicted to watching this go down.
Similar track, I would be remiss if I didn't mention One Page Rules, the game that has single-handedly reignited my interest in Warhammer 40,000. That has nothing to do with Warhammer 40,000. You know, it is a... I played it with a friend of mine the other day, and my friend is... he used to work for CERN, so he's worked for the Large Hadron Collider. He's a very smart man. Not sure if he's on the spectrum. Probably is. Don't know. You know what I mean? But he's very that way. This dude can remember rules from several editions ago verbatim in his head. There you go. That's what it is. You know. So he loves modern 40k. He loves all of the gotcha mechanics. He loves the massive army scales. He loves being at the table for 4 or 5 hours playing these games. I want to die whenever I play a game like that. It drives me to drink. There's a reason why we go to the pub after a game, and it's not because I enjoyed the game, right? So when I played One Page Rules with him, our game was over in an hour and a half, and we played a game, full 2,000-point game, 8-9 units each, smashed the living hell out of each other's armies, and I won on the final. I think it was the final roll of the game is what won me the game, right? I held the central objective. He charged in. I beat off his charge. What is it with me and sexual innuendo today? I beat off his charge, and then the game finished, and I won like 56 to 40, 56 like 50 or something like that, right? And it was great. We shook hands, went away, and he said, "Yeah, it was really good, but like it wasn't really my kind of thing." And I was like, "What?" Like, it was like literally touch and go right up until the end, and everything died, and we played really tactical plays. He was like, "Yeah, but I like having my ranks and soldiers and stratagems and things." And I was like, all right, well, I guess we're into different games, and that's what kind of opened my eyes. If there are people out there who adore 40k as it is, and that's all good, fair enough to them, but I like OPR. I don't have, 40 spare hours in a week to read rules, or I don't have my friend's brain. You need one of those two things. You need no job or my friend's brain to play 40k at a really good level these days. And I can't do it. I don't have the time. So I OPR lets me really play at a high tactical level. It's so simple. right? It is really, really simple, but it is strangely in-depth. So you will get to the stage where if you play a good OPR player, they will run rings around you. But if you're just there with a mate, you can both get into the game in 10 minutes, play a game that's really close, and nobody feels salty. And nobody feels like, oh, well, if I knew about that rule, then, you know, things would be okay, you know? No, it's fine. And combat is back, you know? You move, you can just say, okay, I'm going to move twice, and then I can charge, right? You can literally do that. You can move 6 inches, then another 6 inches, and then charge, you know?
Yeah, I'll back you up there, North.
You know?
Like, one-page rule. I have only played maybe 4 or 5 games of one-page rules. And this is fairly recently, though. And I was very encouraged. The certainty of movement, the back and like the alternating activations.
Yeah, that's the big one.
The simplicity, but still allowing tactical depth, as you explained. It is a much more, for my sensibilities, a more satisfying back and forth, and which is what I kind of want from a game experience, right? Than present 40k, right? Like, I think older editions, doesn't have to go all the way back to third. Like, I think, though, as you do go back through it, older editions of 40k, I think you get more of those thematic, flavorful, rewarding interactions, which, for me, make the longer haul of the game more worthwhile. For others, maybe not, right? Like, for guys like your friend, they kind of like these layering of rules and ploys you can keep in mind, and, you know, counter plays, counter spells, and whatever else. But I fully support your advocacy for one-page rules. I think it's awesome.
It's just, if you're sick of 40k as it is, go and play this game. There is absolutely no reason not to. Like, it will save you time. It will save you sanity. You know, if you're not a big fan of Age of Sigmar, I don't know why. I will get into that in a minute. I quite like Age of Sigmar. But if you find the old world a bit too curmudgeonly for you, there is a rank and file, you know, rank and flank game version of OPR, right? It is a really good game system. That is free right now on the internet. You go download all the rules for free right there, and it's complete. You know,
and the army builders right on your browser also.
Yep, the army.
It's so convenient.
Yeah, it really is.
Super convenient rule set.
Here's a question for you both then. Bonus topic, if you will. If you can get rid of one game or edition that's not Dreadfleet, which one would it be?
10th. Yeah, 10th. 10th and 9th. 40k. Yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed technically I've enjoyed 10th more than 9th, but it's only because the mission structure of 9th annoyed me more than 10th edition's mission structure. I abhorred 9th edition's the way you had to pick your secondaries before the battle begins, and then that skewed everyone's list to making sure they meta matched their secondary quotas, and I don't want to take too many of this. I don't want to be too thematic because then it'll give away my secondaries to my opponent. I just hated what that did to list building in 9th edition. Despite 9th having way more thematic mechanics, which I actually appreciate. Like, you know, you can make a chapter master, just as a, you know, pulling an easy example. You can make a chapter master in 9th edition match play, but you can't do in 10th edition, right? So I guess I would choose 9th. If it has to be an edition of 40k.
I would probably choose 9th because it's what led us into 10th. You know? So without 9th, there is no 10th. So I'd probably agree. I'd probably go with 9th. But to be different, the first edition of Age of Sigmar.
Oh, that's what I was going to say, you bastard.
That's like...
Yeah. Like,
I hope you burn in 20 degrees Celsius, you Tommy bastard.
Well, maybe there's like a different reason that we picked Age of Sigmar. Like, mine would be okay. I'm gonna stick to the low hanging fruit and leave the rest for Maka. How about that? Okay, so I'm gonna go with the way that that game was written, and I like Age of Sigmar now. So I'm not gonna say It's a decent game, but the way the original one was written was a fuck you to people who like the old world. It really was. It was the slip of the mask of Games Workshop, where I've been saying to people for years, guys, they don't like you. You annoy them, right? They want you to just buy the products and shut up. I've been in these meetings. Like, they literally don't like you. And if you read that first edition of Age of Sigmar, you will understand that they don't like you, because they chased off the Warhammer fans. And only now, after Total War Warhammer has been such a success and made so much money for CA and by residual Games Workshop, have they come crawling back to the old world, and even now they don't support it. It has 30-year-old models for 2025 level prices. When I went to the shop with my missus the other day, she was looking for elves and things, went straight to the old world because she loves old school Warhammer, and I said, no, we're not buying that. I'm not buying that. I can get better models 3D printed for a tenth of the price. We're not buying that. Sorry. No, those are 30-plus-year-old models. I'm not paying £50 a box for them. Simple as. You know, for 10 to 15 elves. And they're elves! Fuck that shit, right? You know, but like, I like elves, and I'm kidding. But the Luminef stuff, the new stuff, brilliant. And I went over there and bought some witch elves and different things. Loved it. But in terms of the old school stuff, dude, they don't like old school Warhammer. I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know why they won't just throw their weight in behind, you know, the Magnus the Pious, like his Age of the Empire. It's such an interesting setting where you can build it and do something new with the old world, and they just refuse. It's gonna go the way of Ivrain and her cronies over there in the Eldar, who are just there to just make Games Workshop a little bit of money, and then they're on the back burner, never to be spoken of again. They don't
what a waste
like you. They don't like you. Okay? That's it. The only reason they brought it back in the slight form that they did is because Total War Warhammer earned that much money, and they wanted to make a little bit themselves. They got the old models out the back of the closet, and they're selling them to you at a premium, and you're a fool if you buy them. That's just my opinion. Because they're never going to get behind this game. They're never going to push it, and it's never going to be a thing. So why bother? Go and play the OPR version. Go and play 8th edition. It's a much... Go and play the old Warhammer, man. It's right there. You can go and play it for free. It's right there. You know? But the original Age of Sigmar, I'm going to say, beyond the mechanics and the in-depth stuff that Mac will get into in a sec, the slap in the face that it was to the people who liked the old world, that's why I say Age of Sigmar, the first edition. You know, the rules are like, you know, there was some that were, if you've got a moustache, oh, fuck off.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what I think of.
fucking suck my balls. What's wrong with you? Anyway, Mako, you take it away from there. I can be quiet now.
Well, very much the same sort of thought process. It's a company. Isn't it funny? Like, as a company, it's just such a cynical, like, we know what you want better than you do. We do no market research, but what you want to do is you want to shut up and buy this product. And look, it doesn't really matter what we put out. You'll enjoy it anyway. And to be fair to Games Workshop, they're generally being right with that call, because, I mean, look at what some of the things our community will suck up. But, not to put too fine a point on it. No, original Age of Sigmar, if it had come out with better rules, it would have done a lot to salvage itself. It's the 1-2 punch, right? It's like they got your right nut with deleting the old world, and then they got your left nut with the rules of that 1.0 game system, because it felt like what it was, which was just half-assed and rushed out the door with no thought to what people were actually going to do with their armies, no thought to what future forces would be, and it was a long time before it grew enough of its own factions and did anything interesting that actually made you want to buy into that system. And even then, along the way, like, very few of the factions have got proper faction support, especially the older ones from that time period. You know, if you play like Fire Slayers or Caradon Overlords, like, when was the last time you got something really decent for your faction, you know? Like, that 1.0 is just all the worst aspects of the company, you know, boiled down really into like a single perfect like example. But if you're going to look up in the dictionary, how to botch a release. That's it. That's the example. Yeah, gameplay is no semblance of tactics or strategy. There weren't even points. I don't know if people remember. There weren't even points in the game. So, like, yeah, a game doesn't need to be perfectly... Well, yeah, it kind of said, well, we think a unit is worth this much power. But it was one-page rules before one-page rules, but with no thought put into writing those rules. Because it fitted on like one page, the entire rules of the game system, and it was trying to do away with any sort of, like, it just wanted to be the most... How should I put this? It was the mobile games of tabletop games.
Yep.
That's the only way I can think of putting it.
Fair.
It was just that bare minimum level of effort. It's like, all right, cool. You've completed the tutorial. Here is, how to buy the premium currency. Is what the game felt like. And the premium currency, by the way, was Sigmarines. So, no, just completely botched game. And I say this as a person who's liked every edition of Sigmar since, and frankly, second edition onwards, Sigmar has been, and this is the really sad part, has been really consistently well written as a system since second edition. Like, third and fourth edition Age of Sigmar are like, I could go without. I'd be happy to play version 2. Third and fourth are just like changing things for the sake of that 3-yearly release cycle. It's not because it needed...
That's just their curse they're stuck with.
Yeah, it's not because it needed to happen. And that really goes to show like what Sigmar could have been if the people who've been looking after it rules-wise since had been there to do the initial rules writing, or something. I just think what could have been, instead of people just hating it and burning their armies, and if it had a more positive reception, which again, granted, hard considering what they did to the old world, but it might have ended up in a situation that was better for Games Workshop, because maybe that love for the old world and that resurgence wouldn't be there, and they would have gotten away with being able to just sell us Age of Sigmar and not have to revive the old world if they'd done it just that 5% better than what they did.
I think one thing you're missing from Age of Sigmar is the Christmas feeling of Warhammer. It's that cuddly feeling in your chest when you see Ungrim the Slayer King and characters like that, like Gotrek and Felix and other dudes that represent the setting. Thorgrim, and I know I've mentioned only dwarves, kiss my ass, but like it just has that feeling in your chest of like, oh yeah, this is the shit. It doesn't take itself far too seriously, but it also is serious. Like, yeah, we're going to war here, dude. Let's do it. It's going in the book, right? That kind of thing, right? You look at that map, the world map, and you get excited. You're like, oh, look at these different kingdoms and empires and places I can be from and the stories I can tell. Oh, Blackfire Pass. Oh, everyone's defending the pass, and it's the way into the southern half of the empire. Oh my god, Nuln's going to fall if we don't hold the pass. Things like that. You didn't have that in Age of Sigmar. It was a wishy-washy Mortal Kombat style setting that was the most high fantasy thing I've ever read. And there's a friend of mine who's a professor, and he works at JMU, at John Moores University, and he's used Age of Sigmar in his literary classes when he teaches how to write fantasy. He's actually a fantasy author. I'm not going to name him, but he's doing quite well for himself. And he uses Age of Sigmar as what not to do. As in your setting. What not to do. How not to write a high fantasy setting. It has no rules. It has no solid if this then this. And if there are no rules, there are no stakes. No one's bothered, right? It is the quintessential wargaming setting, but in doing that, they've missed the point. People don't play war games just to play war games. They play war games to roleplay as generals from the cultures and armies that they like, that they identify with. That's what wargaming is. If you're playing Black Powder, you're playing Napoleonic Wars, you're role-playing as a French, English, whatever it is, general at the time of the Napoleonic Wars. Could you have done any better? That's what war games are. That's how they started. It was literal generals and soldiers practicing. Let's take this, let's take the Battle of Carrhae back in the day with the Romans fighting, Hannibal or the Persians, and say, listen, could you have done it any better? Can you win this battle? Let's see. They made rules for it. They used little pebbles and blocks of wood and things, and you would see if you could win the battle and things like that. This is a 1,000-year-old thing. That's what wargaming is. And Warhammer: The Old World gets that. It gives you a setting that has rules, and if you turn over a rock in the Old World, there's grass and mud and bugs and pebbles underneath it, Whereas if you turn over a rock in Age of Sigmar, you see the set the theatre boards of the set where they're playing Age of Sigmar. You know what I mean? It's skin deep. It really is. There's nothing underneath. Even now, years later, they've started to add certain things, but it's not enough. You need a solid world. Forget this realm shit, right? It's garbage. It's garbage. It is absolute garbage. If they had a settled world at the start of Age of Sigmar, that was literally, it's a new planet, and Sigmar's here, and he's much more in your face as a god, and we've got all this cool stuff going on. The main knights are the Stormcast Eternals. They're the elite force of the empires and of men and things. They could have made an entire Tolkien-like setting and busted it out the park. For all the years they had to make that game, they could have absolutely blown everybody away. And the old guys would have gone, if the only thing we're losing is rank and flank, and we're getting this updated version of it's not the Old World anymore, but we get new dwarves, we get new elves, we get new, okay, it's more like 40k, but I like this, right? It would have sold like hotcakes, man. It would have been out the door. But no, it was the low-hanging fruit. That's what they did. They went low-hanging fruit, tell the old fans to fuck off with that new edition. They knew what they were doing, and they knew they'd pull it back. They knew in second and third edition, don't worry, we'll fix this. But first edition, we need to clear out the deadwood. So let's release an edition that's really going to piss them off and get them out the door, get all the vitriol out the way, and then the next edition that we bring out that's actually quite good, we can reap the benefits of, oh, they fixed it, we can get all the good karma. But that's what they did. And that's my final thought on that, is that Games Workshop don't like you. They do not give a shit about you. They don't like you. They like your money. They like that, but they don't like you. And the money they left on the table with Age of Sigmar, out of sheer spite, it never ceases to amaze me. Sometimes I just stand there chuckling, going, how do they do that? Like they left hundreds of millions of pounds on the table there. That they could, not hundreds, but you know what I mean. Like a lot of money. Mm-hmm. That they could have made by just going, if you like the Old World, but you also wish it was a bit less rank and flank and a bit more 40k and how it plays, have I got a game for you, son? They would have made millions doing that. But no. No. And that's why first edition Age of Sigmar sucked balls, and always will do. But I think we're pretty much done. I think we're good to go. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Not in particular. Yeah, if you guys are ready, that's fine with me.
Alrighty.
Have you figured out what your next topic is going to be, Kaifa?
I have a few in our shared document. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I should spoil it or not. The two options that I think I mentioned to you guys earlier could be, if I recall correctly, something about memes and something about pursuing balance. So maybe one of those two, or if there's a better idea that pops into the noggin before our next call, I'll throw it your way.
I like the two that you put on there. I especially the first one. I really like the first one. I think that's a really good one. Yeah, I'm not going to say it, but yeah, that'll be good. Are we setting a date? Are we doing a date? I mean, I'm pretty much good next week apart from Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm pretty open. Okay. I'm pretty open. So.
Okay, yeah, we can hash it out within the next few days. I set a date. lock it in, so to speak.
We will hash that out then. Well, thank you for joining me, guys, and we will be back on Kaifa's channel next week. We're all going to be upping sticks and moving over there for the day while he hosts the podcast. So we'll be over there next week, and we'll speak to you guys next time. Have a good one. Bye now.
Later.